This is Shelf Space. In an era of AI and TikTok trends, it's easy for brands to get distracted by the next shiny thing. But what really moves the needle in the grocery aisle? In this episode, I'm joined by Joe Lyons-Rising, a 20-year veteran of the CPG industry and an expert in sales insights. We dive into why the boring fundamentals still matter, how to master the art of storytelling for overwhelmed category buyers, and what the future of real-time shopper feedback looks like. And before we get nerdy with all the data, I want to give my deepest thanks to our Shelf Space partners, Rima, Picnic Creative, Pacific Coast Distribution, Benchmark 60, Fasken, and TD. Okay, here's Joe from Data Gives Back. Okay, Joe, we've known each other for a while now, but for a little listener disclaimer, you and I are actually, because we're collaborating and working on some corporate training stuff in the future. It's really fun to be able to do this, but we've never hit record before. So this is going to be interesting. I want to welcome you to Shelf Space with the question of this. It's, if you could look into the future, what's one innovation you'd love to see in the grocery store?
I think I would love to see feedback using technology that is real time for shoppers. Shopper insights is really where the industry has been going. And I think that speed to market with those insights and the ability to ask questions while people are shopping is critical for brands to understand. So how they do that, I do not know. I'll leave that up to the AI tech gods and whatnot. But I think I feel like there's already probably something out there in that space.
That's cool. It sounds a little overwhelming. We'll talk about overwhelm later. But especially when there's trends or there's international events or there's things that we hear about eventually through TikTok or through the news or whatever, as a brand, to be able to see that coming out of the grocery store or out of the food service, to be able to see it so quickly and kind of go, oh, let's jump, let's do something. That would be pretty amazing. That's awesome. So we're going to talk data. This might get nerdy. I'm already the dumbest person in the room, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't concern me at all. But when I look ahead to the future of data, I wonder, what is it that brands need to master first before they worry about new cool tech and new cool data streams coming at them? What do they need to master first?
In my, I guess it's about over 20 years now, and working in the CPG industry and primarily all in the market research, insights, category management, the foundations haven't changed of understanding how the CPG industry works, from planograms to sales, promo pricing, that really those fundamentals haven't changed. What I'm concerned about is getting too far ahead, looking at things like the AI technology and things like that as a way to replace that foundation. So for the new analysts coming up, the category managers, sales managers, you still need to have that foundation to understand that the whole industry was built around planograms, category management, supply chain. And that experience is incredible to pass along within an organization as well.
Yeah, those basic pieces that can sometimes get missed, especially when, there's something sexy or cool or trendy kind of going on and brands feel this pull towards where they think things are going, but yet they can forget the basics so quickly. One of the things you and I found connection around early on in our friendship was really around storytelling. I've been doing it from the marketing side for many years, and you've been doing it from the sales side for many years. So why don't we just take a moment, when you look ahead, what is it about the emerging brands and sort of the brands that are really climbing up the ranks? What are they doing different with their storytelling that's leaving their competitors in the dust?
I mean, really, ultimately, storytelling today, it has to be concise and compelling. And so we talked earlier about overwhelm. They are not overwhelming their audience. So they're really understanding their audience, whether they have an hour, 30 minutes, maybe 5 minutes at a store level sales call. They're making it really concise, and they're only pulling a couple of really key insights into that story because they understand their audience is overwhelmed. The buyers are overwhelmed. There's data overload happening everywhere, especially at the buyer level. So if you can make their life easy. And I think the other thing too is that they're utilizing a lot of social media with their story, which is something new we haven't seen before.
What do you mean by that? Like you're saying at the sales level, whether it's data or metrics or feedback or something from social media is coming into that sales conversation quite early on now?
Yes. What we're seeing is that these, let's say, new entrepreneurs launching a food brand, they are also influencers. And if they're not influencers, they have influencers supporting their brands right at the get-go. But I would see that a lot of the newer, younger, successful entrepreneurs, they're acting like social media influencers. And it's really compelling for a retailer because a retailer is trying to continue the loyalty, bring it in, have a great presence, which is tough for retailers on social media. And so these brands are doing a great job. I've been following a lot of these brands, let's say the past 5-6 years closely, whether it's on LinkedIn because they're doing it from a B2B or they're doing it on Instagram or TikTok to go right directly B2C. So I think that they're bringing in that piece as a really big lever in their overall story to retail.
And if the fundamentals are there, then it's a great 1-2 punch.
Yeah, it's fundamentals, something that's innovative. And then they're also bringing themselves, like they are the face of their brand. So in the storytelling, they're bringing themselves. It's something that I had to get used to after leaving 16 years in corporate CPG and starting my own business. I had to get comfortable with telling my own story as being the face of the brand of our organization, and opening up and talking about things that are going well and a lot of things that are not going well, being very open and transparent.
And when you talk to sales leaders or even food leaders and entrepreneurs, what is it about the data that's coming at them or the data that they're dealing with that they hate?
Whenever there's data that's just, well, let's just call it what it is, a spreadsheet, and there's too much information on it, let's say like an item ranking, the person who is sending it hasn't taken the time to really understand like what are the key insight and implication, like why should the person, the VP or senior VP of sales even waste their time looking and reading the report? So that hasn't really changed. But I think that what it's happened is that the time they have continues to shrink, and the speed at which they have to make decisions has also compressed. They need to make decisions faster, but they need to have it rooted in data. They can't be making decisions based on just their hunch and their opinion. Has to be aligned with the data.
And one of the barriers I see for especially emerging brands is they do get a hold of some data, maybe, not a lot, but they get a hold of some, but they don't even have the bandwidth or more importantly, the resources to act on that data. But they don't want to be blind to what's going on. How do you see them navigating that, that balance of just like not quite having enough to tackle it, but also wanting to make sure that they've got good line of sight?
I think that if you're kind of creative and I use creative in a good way, because if I say creative analytics, I'm not talking about changing the number, right? Again, my background's Nielsen. I was a category advisor for Loblaw and Walmart. I never twist data. I don't never recommend it. But when I say creative, it means that if you're missing information for a category, there's like 15 to 20 resources online and go dig for it. Even when I was a director, we were managing over 14 categories. We didn't have full access of all the retailer POS, all the bells and whistles of Nielsen. So you have to be creative on the key nuggets you can get. Sometimes that's free. Sometimes it's being creative on what budget you have and then just utilizing those key points in a certain way. So I've seen that too with brands. I've been hired to do some micro consulting for companies to do that as well. Where they don't have the budget and they want me to come in and do some creative digging and research. And that's what I've been doing for 20 years.
Where do you think AI fits into all this? I know a lot of people turn to Gemini or Chat or whatever just to, pull some data, but are you seeing that as being helpful? Is it distracting? You talked about real-time data. Is AI actually helping solve problems for those that are dealing with the data and trying to make decisions and pull insights out of what their brand's doing in market?
I would say yes, but not always. And I've been in my own business utilizing different AI from Copilot to ChatGPT and a few others. And I'm usually trying to test its knowledge of category management, CPG industry, data analytics, and it is definitely not perfect. That's why they have the disclaimer always. And that's another reason why I say the foundations are important. So if you don't know the foundations and you just take their output as like the truth, you could be in trouble because you don't have that gut and feeling experience to push back. But I see that it's a great tool for increased efficiency for some of the really mundane and manual tasks that have dragged down some of the commercial businesses. I'm someone that spent a lot of time building planograms. It's incredibly time resource heavy. And it's why some companies have pushed back on being advisors because they couldn't invest in the resources. So things like that, I think, can save time. Also going through like large downloads of data dumps from POS. You can utilize some tools. At the end of the day, though, you still need to know where you're going with it. So if you don't know why you're using the AI or how best to use it, then you could be spending a lot more time than if you didn't use the AI. And I went through that in the beginnings. I still am learning always how to use AI better to increase efficiency.
And I see Shopper Insights. Well, I feel like Shopper Insights sometimes remind me of social listening, where you can get a lot of data points. You can get a lot of like, oh, that's sort of interesting. But in the end, it's like, well, okay, well, what do we do with that? Do we drop it into our innovation pipeline? Does it affect our messaging? Should our social media content change? Where do you see the future of Shopper Insights coming into the emerging brands, the brands that are really trying to push forward?
So Shopper Insights, to me, have been one of the most exciting areas to work in. And I've always been excited, whether I was working at a company and they decided to invest in a new level of service that had those advanced Shopper Insights, or if I was working as a consultant, kind of feel like a kid in a candy store when I get access to that information, because we're always trying to make the best hypothesis of why a shopper did what they did or what they will do based on the best data available. The next layer of Shopper Insights gets more of a driver of why they did that to support our hypothesis. So I think the challenge in the past is that, you might be waiting a few weeks. If it's retailer POS, you might get it week to week, and that's fine, but it's not customizable. Where for a custom study, it costs more money and it takes longer. But what I have seen, companies like Field Agent or Cattle, they've been doing great jobs at utilizing mobile. And that's nothing like brand new. That's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years. But I think Field Agent Canada now has over 300,000 agents in Canada. So you can get real-time information in like less than a week of what's going on. So I think it's understanding where you want to be very specific. You can get very specific shopper insight information and getting answers to your questions about how you may want to adapt like a trade strategy, a sales strategy, or even a long-term brand strategy.
And when I talk to American brands or brands that are selling heavily in the US, you hear amazing stories of all the data and all the things that are available to them. And then when you start talking about up here, north of the border, it feels like the data landscape, especially on the consumer side, it just really drops off or it just becomes wickedly expensive. But is there a path for sort of the Canadian landscape to grow and change quickly, or do we feel like it's always going to be notably behind the U.S. consumer landscape?
It's tough on certain areas for us to be ahead of the U.S., just given the sheer amount of population size, number of stores, and the amount of dollars that could be up for grabs for companies, right, to advance technology or invest in it. We even saw that the rollout for Walmart, when they're rolling out their new Shopper Insights program, of course, it rolled out in the U.S. first. And then over a year plus later, it's slowly coming into Canada. But even those companies I mentioned earlier, those are Canadian companies. Field Agent, they have representation obviously in the US, but also in Canada. So same technology. I think that there's scalability. I'm starting to see like companies doing scalability for small businesses, which I'm really happy to see. I know it's been a real focus for Nielsen IQ, is really understanding these smaller emerging businesses. And I think it's great because these companies don't have the big budgets and they don't need all the data the same way that a larger, tier 1, tier 2 CPG company or brand does. So I think that the data companies, the research companies really are starting to get a good understanding of that now and supporting that. Also, they can't keep going after the big tier 1s and tier 2s, right? They need new clients and new revenue streams.
So let's play a little game here. In the future, I would imagine things like AI can help create quick dashboards and ways to visualize data more easily. Right now, it does feel like that's still kind of complicated, but it feels like we're ticking towards it. So when it comes to visualizing data, are there tools out there? Like, for example, I've tinkered around with Tableau and have worked with some brands that have used tools like that to help make some of this data, at least more readily available or accessible, especially when you have to start telling a story about data. If someone says, I'm going to tell you a story, and then they pull up a spreadsheet, most people's brains explode. So, wondering what kind of tools you see brands using out there to help tell that visual story.
I'm honestly still hearing a lot of companies still using Power BI. And then there could be other dashboards using Tableau as well. And I haven't seen a drastic change yet, just personally, in terms of AI coming to the forefront or being a totally different visualization. Those companies that are creating Power BI tools, yes, there's definitely AI capabilities now that are in there. But I still think we're at a phase where, say, for example, like with Microsoft 365 today, it's coming with Copilot built into Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. How often are our employees in CPG really using it every day right now? I don't think it's the majority of their time. I think they're using it in certain cases, and it really depends on the training they received and how comfortable they are using it. Is kind of the feedback. I'm hearing a lot of companies still right now just rolling out Copilot, starting to do like initial training. So CPG, I think, is still a little bit behind in the AI use cases. But I think that wherever there's manual work being done, whether it's visualization, data analytics, AI in the next couple of years will be a big solve. And I know that on the back end of the data companies, it's already there. It's already creating a lot more efficiencies, and you just don't see it as an end user of the databases.
Well, on the other side of the coin, and this shocked me when you and I first started collaborating, is that you actually spend a lot of time training on Microsoft Excel, which really surprised me. I'm like, you have found that a lot of food companies need help to make their spreadsheet work more effective and more helpful.
100%. I was training on Excel level 2 last week with an incredible local food brand. So Excel has not gone away, not even close. And if anything, I think that people are probably getting more comfortable using Excel, whether it's through training or you're utilizing, Copilot or ChatGPT to help you when you get stuck. And personally, that's what I do too. If there's advanced functions, things that I've never done, because Excel is a beast. I love using AI for that. Just asking it straight up, this is what I'm trying to do. What options could I do it that are the easiest way and most efficient way? And because Microsoft is such a well-known and well-used program, that's one set of software that I find that all the AI is really strong at giving you great tips and recommendations and guides for doing it.
You mean the built-in AI, like Copilot built into Excel?
Yeah, but even before I had Copilot, I was asking ChatGPT to help me with Excel if I ran into issues, and it was great because it can reference so much. There's so much online training that it can reference that way. So I think the one thing about training, like with Excel, and why I still train in person or virtually, but live, is that people like to be trained live versus training on their own. And it's kind of like going to the gym on your own versus having a personal trainer. You're more motivated to go when someone's there, you have an appointment booked, and they're going to walk you through it, and they're going to answer all your questions versus you trying to figure it out or go along with whatever that piece of training is already built, and you don't have any customization to it.
And a lot of brands, not every brand, but many, have a omni-channel approach, and they've got a lot of different distribution points. They're doing D2C, they're doing food service, they're doing a bunch of different things. When you have so much data coming out of grocery stores, but you have a lot less data coming out of some places, and they've got your own, first-party data, what are the challenges that brands are having kind of navigating this more holistic sales approach when there's just a lot of different kinds of data coming from different angles?
I think that no matter what size of organization you're with, how many data sources that you buy, you just need to know what's available to you. So that could be just your shipment data. Okay, well, what's the best way to build a story just using your shipment data? And most companies, that's where they started. They probably actually started definitely way before they even shipped anything. But I built strong stories just using shipment data. I've helped customers do that. So that's where I say about being kind of creative and really understanding what's the best data available to me to make the best story. And every story is different. So every time you're going to go to the well and maybe choose different key insights from different data sources. And that's one of the things that I love to train is this like kind of opening our minds and think, well, don't just think of the day-to-day Nielsen POS data that you constantly use. Think about StatsCan data. Think about the industry magazines. Go online. There's information there as well that you might want to use for that very specific story you're trying to support.
And how do teams, like sales teams and marketing teams, often they're like silos. They don't communicate very well sometimes. Do you see a way through that? Do you see teams sort of solving that problem and working more closely together? Or is there always will there always be this friction between those two camps?
No, I don't think there's always going to be, or there needs to be friction between the two of them. I've seen pretty much, I feel like all cases where marketing works very closely with sales. Sometimes small organizations, sales is marketing. And unfortunately, other cases where they feel like they're working in almost two different companies and they continue to butt heads. I always felt like it was a great opportunity being in category management or insights to bring everyone together. That's one of the things I talk about in my training is how important like kickoff meetings are. Whenever there's a project, whether it's a sales manager that says, I got a meeting in 3 weeks with a buyer, I'm thinking about doing this deck, and I'll recommend, okay, who else do we want in that? We should have a kickoff call. Like, first of all, an email is not going to cut it. Let's have at the very least a 30-minute call, whether in person or online, and invite who you think you need to support you. So whether that's brand, trade marketing, maybe finance. And if we're all on the same page, we're also going to be a lot more efficient. Because, and I've seen this and I've had it happen, it's frustrating. The insights, their Catman team is not going to go off and do a bunch of work that marketing is going to do at the same time. We should be working as a team and communicating along the way. And then all come back together again with the draft, talk it out together. And the other great thing with doing that is then you all build the final recommendations together, which are the strongest piece. You're doing all this work, but really that's your objective with the whole thing. You're trying to get products listed. You're trying to increase store count. You're trying to get support for a new front page ad. So that last slide, that recommendation slide is critical, but it's great to have it all, kind of 360 supported with all the commercial team.
It's so common to hear a sales team complaining that there's not enough marketing to support the stores, and the marketing team is saying there's not enough distribution or not enough product available in a market to really push it. It does seem like it's easy to point fingers at each other.
It can feel like that. I feel like at time I've kind of been like CPG therapist and listened to those, but then also be mediator, bring people together. But then once that communication flows naturally, like let's say, for example, brand marketing team is working on a launch and they're a year or two out and they're already having meetings with sales to get their feedback. What is really feasible? What are your planogram timelines like for your retailer? Because they're all different times. And they build that into their plans and take all that feedback into consideration. So they're not building a distribution target of 90 or 80. They're understanding, hey, we might only get 65, but 65 is actually going to be great year one, what have you, right? So that's when I see as success, is when you have that communication, and then comes the respect, because you're working on the launch together. And the best launches I've ever worked on is when you have that feeling. Brand goes out with sales. right? And sales wants them to be there, and brand wants to be there, and it goes great, and the retailers really appreciate it.
Is there a myth that you find yourself debunking over and over and over again in CPG?
I think that if you buy data, you will have sales. So if you buy $1 million in sales or $1 million in data, you're going to have X number of increased or incremental sales. And the data alone doesn't really have any value. And even just pulling reports doesn't have a ton of value. You're increasing it from just being raw data, but you need someone, or really people, because there's so much data, you can't just have one person, two or three typically, to be able to pull out the insights that are actionable. So if you don't make a decision from the data, or you can't make a clear decision, it just doesn't have a lot of value. You got to question, why are you even investing in using it? And a decision could be not to act. That's still a decision. So a lot of times it's a very important decision. But I have spent way too much of my life, and that's probably why I don't have any color left in my hair, pulling massive reports, huge data dumps, and just pumping out reports that are not really giving a lot of value. They're not adding enough insights. And I think it took me a little while in my career to start questioning those. Like, why are we doing this? What purpose is it serving? And what decisions are being made from these?
Now let's take a step to the left here and just speak to the work that you're doing, and in the business context that you've built for yourself. You really have an impact play as a consultant, as an advisor, as a trainer, that you really want to make sure that you're helping people beyond just their jobs. What does that work look like for you, especially in the future?
So one of the main reasons when I quit my director role in the summer of 2020 is that I just felt this need to do something with greater impact. I think many of us feel that as human beings, whether it's because we've been doing volunteer work. And I just felt that I wanted to continue to do the work, but in a unique way. And that's why in setting up our social enterprise, Data Gives Back, from the very beginning, I said I want to donate a portion of our revenue, which at the time was 25%. I want to kind of go big, have big impact, to a great charity called Season Center for Grieving Children. It changed the way that I viewed the work. Even though I was still doing similar work, I was still working as a consultant for different retailers and manufacturers, and then doing the training, very similar I'd been doing before. It felt so different, and it still does today. And we've now donated over 135,000 in 5 years, and also been able to volunteer. So when I talk to people that are in corporate, and maybe they've been there 10 plus years, 15 years, and they're kind of questioning their purpose and their impact, not everyone has to quit their job and start a social enterprise to have that. There's look around, there's probably great charities you can get involved with within your organization. And you could be mentoring someone and things like that, and giving back, giving your time to help someone else in need. I gotta say, it's the best feeling.
I love that. All right, last question for you. Your favorite grocery shopping experience anywhere in the world?
Wow. I was not prepared. I did not see that one coming. This is tough. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, if you've asked this question before, that finds it tough, because I've been in so many different stores. Should
I play the Jeopardy theme song?
I think so. I can't even tell the number of times I've been in a store, whether shopping or store checks. I would say that when the new Loblaw Maple Leaf Gardens launched, if you remember, I don't know if, anyways, this is in the Toronto area when they redid the old Leafs hockey arena, and they made it into this premium view of Loblaw, their premium stores. That was one of the most eye-opening shopping experiences I ever had, that I felt was really transformational. And I think that Loblaw created a shift in the market from just conventional banners to then premium conventional. And they really set it apart at a time when discount banners has continued to grow share, and they continue to grow share today. They brought back the experience of shopping. That's been in play in other banners, other regions, such as even Sobeys in Quebec is an incredible experience. Or if we look at Longo's other banners, But that one, I felt they really went above and beyond. And I still remember going there for the grand opening and doing one of the store checks with the team I was working with at the time. And I was wowed.
That's awesome. Joe, I love that we're collaborators. And more importantly, I love that we're friends. And I'll be coming out to CHFA in September. So that'll be at least closer. At least we'll be in the same province. So we'll connect for sure. But I really appreciate your insights and the work that you do, and especially the impact that you have in the communities and the charities around you. So thanks for doing what you do, and appreciate you.
Thanks, Corwin. Really appreciate having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Shelf Space. If you like what you hear, I would be eternally grateful for a 5-star rating and a quick share on social. Your support means the world to me and our partners, TD, Fasken, Rima, Pacific Coast Distribution, Picnic Creative, and Benchmark 60. For bonus content and resources from our sponsors, go to shelfspacepodcast.com. I'm Corwin Hiebert. I'm glad we're on this rocket ship together. I'll see you in the future.